welcome to Saved by the Bel-Air After Show, the official podcast of the Bel-Air subreddit. Go to it at reddit.com/r/Bel-Air. Share your thoughts with us about what you thought of this week's episode. We're talking about season 2, episode 2. And let's introduce our panelists for this week, because of course we got Nolan rocking back in. Hello, Nolan. How you doing?
We in here. Houston, what's up?
Hey. And then, of course, we've got our OG from last season, Mr. Gyasi Clemens. Hello, Gyasi.
What's up? Good to be back.
Glad to have you back. How you been?
I've been good, man. Been missing this show. I'm glad we can all get together and dive into it again for one more season.
Heck yeah. Hopefully one more of many seasons, right?
Definitely.
I think it'll go. I mean, it's been pretty good so far. I think it'll go 5 seasons. What do you think?
Yeah,
think
it's one of Peacock's more successful shows because it's still a new streaming service. So they got this one with some name recognition, some solid cast. So I think it's gonna go a little bit longer, a good amount longer.
Longer than 5 seasons?
Ooh, I hope not. So
no,
not that I don't like the show, but after like a good amount of seasons, sometimes you see the quality starts to slender. But if they have a good story in mind, it can go 10 seasons. I love it. If I don't want to stretch it just because they have to, like we've seen so many other shows do.
Right. Well, I think the original show went 5 seasons, and I think they ended it for the right reasons because it was starting to jump the shark. That's what Will said in his own biography about the show. So I'm okay with 5 seasons if it's a good story. I think the issue obviously is once you get the kids so much older, right, they're now going to go off to college and they're going to break apart, and then you can't have the show because the show is about the family unit at the house in Bel-Air.
Exactly.
Right. Now, if they want to do offshoots or, I would say called the shows based on other shows, right? That we want the spinoff, the Jeffrey spinoff, right? Mm-hmm. That's kind of like the big one, but yeah, there could be spinoffs. I could see that. But we didn't have you last week, of course. We talked about episode 1. So just briefly, what were your thoughts on episode 1, Gyasi?
I liked the episode. I thought it was good to be back in the Bel-Air spirit, to see the cast again. I love seeing everyone together. I love the energy that, Jabari Banks and everyone brings. I thought it was an interesting start. I do think that maybe Will, everything was forgiven kind of too easily. They kind of hyped up Will leaving in season 1. Like, it was a big moment how the finale ended for season 1 of him on his own now. And I was kind of interested to see how he was going to make it on his own, what he was going to do. Not having the Banks family support anymore. But it ended up with him. Everyone was just kind of forgiven by the end. Him and Uncle Phil hugged it out, and now he's back at the house. So it always kind of bugs me when the big status quo change of a season finale is immediately undone, for the next episode. Right. But I get why it had to happen because, like you said, it is a show about the family in Bel-Air in the house. So a good episode. It's good to see everybody back. Maybe I think the writing could have been a little stronger in certain areas. I kind of undid the finale, but I like the direction to set up, and it got new antagonists maybe that can cause some problems with the family. And I thought the preview for the rest of the season looked cool too. So
absolutely.
Scared the episode too.
Yeah, no, we'll talk about Phil's amazing ability to mend bridges and convince people to come back to the house in a minute. But I think the general consensus between us last season, or actually last episode, was that story beat kind of went and was resolved a little bit quicker than we all expected. Like, we all thought this will probably be a few episode arc, and they're like, nope, right back into the house, right back into the status quo. And that's kind of par for the course for the show based on last season, right? In terms of how quickly story beats happen, which makes it seem like they've got a lot of things planned for this series or this season, and they're just trying to get those things they're going to happen out of the way so they can introduce new things, right?
Yeah.
All right, great. Well, let's get into this episode. A lot of stuff happened. Of course, I like to talk about specific relationships and story beats that we saw. So let's start with the core of this episode, which again is always going to be primarily Will, and let's talk about his sort of desires to try to get the attention of Doc, right? So we see that that's causing some friction with his team. His team sees him as sort of the showboater. He wants all the attention. he's obviously a good player, but he's not a team player, and that's obviously causing some friction between him and the team. But at the end, we do see that in the end he does show off to Doc, and he's showing off he's a really good player, and Doc sees that he's a good player, and he's definitely interested in doing more things with Will. Now, last episode, there was some sort of questioning about like what are Doc's intentions? Is he a good guy? Is he a bad guy? Are they setting him up to sort of be the antagonist? And we're definitely seeing here some tension between him and Phil. But overall, what did you think of Will's sort of relationship with the basketball team and sort of Will's sort of dead set desire to win the approval and attention of Doc? Do you like where it's going with that in terms of the tensions it's setting up, or what do you think about that? Let's start with you, Gyasi.
Interesting. So I think I do like so far the inclusion of Doc's character, even though his hair kind of bugs me, but the inclusion of his character, because it's kind of setting up like an anti-Uncle Phil. Like we have this someone who's still about their business, still driven and still kind of passionate and strong-willed, but it's kind of the opposite side. So I'm curious, like you said, his intentions or his motivations with Will. They had that little hint scene where it's like he's looking at the Banks family. What's funny to me is like they kind of have this intense music, and like even when he had that conversation with Phil, they had that like dramatic stuff going on. But if you actually look at it, like nothing really wild had happened yet. Like even though he was looking at the family, it didn't say like can't wait to finesse his family, or he didn't say anything disrespectful to Uncle Phil either. It was just like if there was no music, the scene would have been like more normal, because it was just like you got to talk to me. He's like, will do, shook his hand, but they definitely do that for a reason. So I think it makes sense that Will's out here trying to impress this guy because he heard about him, and playing basketball is his main motivation. So I don't know. It's definitely an interesting setup for the rest of the season. I'm excited to see how Will handles it and kind of the crossroads that this puts him at.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I was surprised a little bit how quickly Phil turned on the sort of antagonism towards Doc. Like he definitely sees through whatever it is he's trying to do, like, in terms of getting into Will's mind. What you thought, Nolan?
I mean, I kind of felt before the episode even started off, we was gonna start here, basketball game, something, conflict in the locker room, something like that. I feel like I can't remember if it was last episode or maybe it was this episode, but I remember Doc was specifically quoting like you were like a 25, 27 point per game guy in Philly. Now you're like 17 points per game here in Bel-Air type of person or whatever. Like I'm trying to see the Philly Will or whatever. I mean, I feel like it's unnecessary drama just because like clearly Doc has seen Will as a competitor. He has a gift. He's gifted on the court or whatever. But Will is also playing in the system. Like people know that. Like your coach calls up a play, you do it. Like I feel like Doc is just. I feel like if he was a real recruiter for whatever team, whatever, like this would not be such a pain point, such a bad him trying to be such a bad influence. It rode Will's like integration into the Bel-Air team. I feel like it wouldn't be that big of a deal if this was like they weren't writing him to be like this counter to what Will has already laid in Bel-Air. Like again, like I say, it goes back to like the writing. Just feel like some of these things are like forced or whatever. Like clearly the guy can see Will is gifted and can do things. Like clearly you watched him all game do X, Y, and Z. But because he doesn't take the last shot to win the game, like all of a sudden it's like, I didn't see enough. Like what?
Yeah.
I know, right?
Yeah, I felt that. It's given that like CW ride a little bit where it's like not too realistic scenarios. And I do wonder, no, that's good, because I'm like looking at Doc, I'm like, what kind of recruiter is this guy? Like I know they say he's like a tribal team or AAU, but why it seems so shady? Like if he was a normal college scout or something, I feel like it would be more streamlined. Like, he should be doing things, he should be looking out. But they kind of setting him up as like, what is this travel team? Like what is he recruiting for? I don't think it's college. So like what's really going on?
They're trying to get Will on the Harlem Globetrotters. That's That's the
Man,
Yeah, I was going to say, it's like,
well, what do you think about the conflict between him and his coach, and just the nature of, if you have such a gifted player that Will is it right to want to push him to, as he's sort of taken the lead, to be the best player he could be on the court, or is it better to have that sort of team dynamic where you're allowing, other team members to have sort of their spotlight, even if they're not as good as the key player?
Nolan's
Like,
an
do you think
athlete.
that there's any
You
sort
gotta
of
answer that.
valid, what's that?
I said Nolan's an athlete. He got to tackle that one and should hear his thoughts.
I mean, you got to realize these guys in Bel-Air probably been playing together for a while.
Right.
They understand each other. They may not be good, but they're a team, right? They know each other's
Yeah.
strengths and weaknesses. And for a lot of people, it's I don't know if y'all saw the movie Teen Wolf. Well, I mean, probably a lot of people have seen the movie Teen
The
Wolf
original
with
Teen Wolf, or like
original,
the
original one when can't think of his name, but he turns to the wolf. Like the team was trash, and then like all of a sudden, like now that he's this wolf, they start winning stuff. But you see how like that explosion of talent that wasn't there before, even though it's somebody they're familiar with. In Will's case, they're not familiar with this guy, but still it's an infusion of talent that they didn't have
yeah,
before that's carrying them to wins. Like it rubs people the wrong way. Like
yeah,
not the person that you're used to playing with. It does give them a little bit more star power, a little bit more attention, and then it takes away from you. In this case, on Teen Wolf, like I mean, he was the team. He was rebounding, dunking,
yeah,
shooting from all over the place and stuff like that. I mean, Will, I guess, plays a similar role.
right,
But again, like their coach is not like smoking a cigarette during timeouts and everything, just waiting for this to get over with. Like he's there to make sure that the team remains a team. And so
right,
it probably was a bit different in Philly for Will, especially in a public school setting. Like when you showcase your best players, like that's what's going to get you to win. Since Bel-Air
right.
was a losing team, I don't think they were like, man, we could almost play, we can make the playoffs this year, right? Or whatever. Like that's exciting for them. But like for some
Sure.
people, what I'm saying, like that's a big deal. Like they probably had like a little parade around campus and everything for that, right? But
Yeah.
like Will's probably used to like going deep in the playoffs, regional tournaments, state championship games or whatever. And so yeah, like it's just these guys are, I think they're stuck in the mentality, I'd rather lose and be a team than to be taken on a ride with, a one man show and we just play the background role. I feel like that's kind of where the conflict is coming at. And the coach recognizes that and he just doesn't want Will to, I guess, separate what's already been kind of put together over all these last few years.
Right, right. The coach is looking at the larger team and giving everybody a chance to get their, skills in, because it is still high school, right? But I can tell you from, at least having done, we did put my kids into some little league basketball this past season, and everybody got a chance to play. But you also had folks who demonstrated a certain skill set and demonstrated capabilities with regard to, either shooting or running the ball and stuff like that. And so you want to play towards your strengths as well. But I think the conflict there is definitely going to erupt further. I think that, like, with all of the little story threads, they're just going to stretch it out over the course of the season, or the course of the show season,
Yeah.
which is kind of just going to be the trend for this whole series, really, and this episode in particular. Well, let's talk a little bit about the other major story thread, which really affected a lot of the major characters. Was, of course, the firing of Ash's teacher, for giving Ashley some curriculum outside of the standard curriculum, giving her a book talking about rights and whatnot, and some additional reading. And of course, the teacher gets fired for this, teaching outside the curriculum. And then this, of course, sets off Ash to be very, upset about it. And then it leads to, Carlton, of course, encouraging the Black Student Union to rally behind this teacher, and then Will suggesting the protest. And of course, we know from the previews that we're going to see this sort of get bigger over time and turn into a larger thing. But what were your thoughts on this whole storyline in general? And I know, Gyasi, before the show, you were mentioning that this storyline very much reflected something that happened in the real world. So can you kind of compare your thoughts of the fictionalized version of this to what you kind of saw in the real world and in the story you read?
Yeah, definitely. So there was a situation that I was very close to because a family friend of ours who was a teacher at a university at a school on Howard University's campus in DC was actually let go for teaching Black history at a HBCU on a HBCU campus, which was kind of insane. But
Really?
you
Wow.
know, they had a new principal. Yeah, you wouldn't think, but they had a new principal brought in, and she was really like deadline on stick to the curriculum. You know, we're not allowed to teach this and that. And the teacher did his job. He taught the curriculum, but similar to the show, he also threw in extra like, these are Black writers, or this is a story of like a Black tribe and a tribe in Africa that overcame adversity or X, Y, and Z. So he added in additional history, and just like having the students like know themselves and kind of like understand that different perspectives on what they were reading, not like a traditional Western curriculum. And they let them go, and students were mad. They staged a protest, and it was a big thing. Got a lot of media coverage. And my mom actually ended up, who was friends with the teacher, ended up hiring him to her school. But so seeing it play on TV was just insane because it was a very similar situation. Students staged a protest, students walked out. So I think it's cool that they're taking, because I know watching it, you would think like, oh, would this really happen? But it's crazy to think that it actually did happen in real life. And I think it's cool to see them taking inspiration from that and kind of bringing light to, you know, how that could be a thing. And I think it's also extremely cool they brought the original Ashley back. You know, seeing like the original Bel-Air cast members,
Yeah.
Fresh Prince come back to Bel-Air just shows that like they respect what's going on, they respect this new direction, and you know, enjoy it enough to not just support it but be a part of it. So I think it's dope. I do think Carlton's involvement, like, they're kind of like, are they fishing for reasons as how can we get Carlton more like in touch with his Black side in regards to the school? Because, you know, season one, he was very anti, you know, Black student union or very just disconnected. And now he's trying to interested in the president and like trying to play up that role. So I'm interested to see is he genuine about it, or is he just kind of trying to get in good with his crowd? I don't know.
Yeah, no, I mean, it is, like I would think if any, institution would be more sensitive to that, a middle school might just because of the age of the
Sure,
children,
yeah.
but a college, I mean, like
Yeah.
a college is all about expanding your horizons and learning new things. So I'm just really surprised about that. I thought it had
Yeah.
some sort of connection or tie to everything that's going on in Florida with the whole restriction on,
Mhm.
teaching of certain subjects related to race and whatnot. But it
I think
sounds
it definitely
definitely much.
related to that too. I think it was
It
a
could
kind of
be.
like a amalgamation of everything, but it's definitely similar situation. But it's like I said, this happens across the world where they're banned like To Kill a Mockingbird and so
Right.
many like books centered on like sensitive issues or just truthful things that may be hard to talk about or just we don't want to talk about it because it may make some people feel bad, so let's just avoid it altogether, which can be really very detrimental to progress or understanding like why certain things are the way they are.
Yeah, and absolutely. What are your thoughts, Nolan?
First off, like I just feel like this is finally like a plot involving Ashley that I'm like interested in.
Yeah.
She's kind of been sprinkled here and there, and I think last week we talked about the whole show, the whole first episode kind of revolving around her birthday, but it really felt like that was just insignificant. It was just a party, honestly. And then like at the
Yeah.
end, like they had a cake for her and saying happy birthday, but outside of that, it didn't really have like a really large impact on her as a character.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's definitely good to see something more organic to her age group. Something that she can possibly deal with. And we see some more character growth with her. Tatiana Ali back as her teacher, definitely a good nod to the original show. I mean, last season, they had the original light skin on Viv. I
Hmm.
think she's been on. Was she on this? Was she? I think I've seen her on a preview or something. She's gonna
I
be
don't
on
know.
this
I
season.
don't know. I
I
It's,
think I saw her in a preview because
yeah,
I would
or it could
imagine
have been a
so.
flashback, but I think she'll be.
yeah. So I mean that's good that they're kind of bringing in old familiar faces and putting them in as different characters and stuff. The firing just did sit right with me. Again, like it doesn't really make sense to me on a grand scale. Like, sure, she's teaching outside the curriculum. But like for me, it's like, is she really teaching outside the curriculum, or is she suggesting books for a student that wants to know some more stuff? Like it's not like she's telling the
Right.
class like, "Hey class, I have one extra credit,
Yeah.
books or whatever." So it's it's little things like that I feel like could have been fleshed out a little bit better to get the point home or whatever. But
Right.
again, we're here, we got to deal with it. And clearly, like this teacher has not only touched Ashley, but has clearly taught a lot of the other older kids. And they really respect her. And as Aunt Viv said, like this is one of the few black teachers there.
Hmm.
Sucks that she's teaching, like I think Aunt Viv was quoting mainly, a lot of black authors.
Right.
And so, now they're losing, that impasse to teaching these kids, especially the young kids of color, about themselves and
Sure.
notable writers in English for them. So, yeah.
No, I think it is definitely a little drama for drama's sake, right? Because you need to have something happen to catalyze and act as a catalyst for the other characters to react to. And of course, you wanted this to be, if she was going to get fired for something, it would have to be something obviously virtuous in this regard, right? You wouldn't want her fired for doing something actually wrong, or whatnot. But it is kind of like what you said. Like she wasn't telling the whole class to read this book, that may have been outside the curriculum. It was literally a student asking for more reading and a teacher helping them
That
out. And
scene with the
so,
little girl. Yeah, the little girl kind of looking and like, well, why is she not suggesting me books and stuff? Like, I don't know. Like, okay.
like, why does she care? Right? Like, oh no, my friend is getting additional books. Like, I don't think any student in any real situation in middle school
Yeah.
would care that much
Yeah.
about a fellow student getting a book from a teacher. Like, they just don't care, right?
Yeah. I
Like,
mean,
oh, okay,
they did say, to be fair, they did say that it was like a buildup of stuff because
right.
in the first episode they had that scene of the her getting like reprimanded or by management or whatever. So I
Oh
don't think
yeah.
it wasn't this one moment that was
No,
like, oh,
no, yeah.
fired. So so they did build it up, but it is still like, yeah, it could have been a different scenario. But I do like your point though, as far as like this putting Ashley in this situation is definitely a lot more interesting than kind of some of the stuff they were doing with her last season, if anything, because the writers kind of were forgetting about her last season. I think she didn't have like a very good storyline outside of the I like this girl who may like
Hmm.
Will, and I mean it was okay, but it wasn't super engaging to me. But I think this is like more culturally relevant and it gives her a little more to do than just what she was going on last season.
Yeah, no, it is interesting how they're really integrating Ash into the story much more so than last season, I think, and really how her story beats are driving a lot of the action in the
Yeah,
lives of others. I mean, the reason Will came back was because Ashley wanted her back. The reason Carlton's kind of going towards more activism is because something happened to Ash or with regard to
yeah,
Ash. So great to keep her involved and not just as somebody to check into because they have to, because they obligate. So
yeah,
no, it's great to see
definitely.
that. All right, well, let's talk a little bit about the other major characters that got some screen time. Jazz and Hill. We saw a little bit of the as the world turns, right, between the two of them. Nolan's shaking his head.
Nolan was
Nolan,
hard
you
for
got
them to
some.
watch, man.
Yeah, well, we got Jazz obviously very protective of his car, and Hill saying she's going to keep care of it. And I thought, oh my God, like Hill's going to destroy the car. Like it's just something's going to happen, and it's going to get banged up or something. But no, it's less dramatic than that. But of course, Jazz is just not happy that Hill isn't making their relationship public, and that Hill's getting walked over by the other lady in the creator house. And then, of course, at the end of the episode, Hill decides to show her seriousness about the relationship by surprising everyone with a parent and boyfriend meeting, which I'm sure will go very well. Um, what are your thoughts? We'll start with you, Nolan. Since you have some very strong thoughts about this particular relationship.
Yeah, I mean, again, like with everything this season, just seems like everything is just kind of rushed. Um, I'm starting to pick up on a pattern with Hillary that she only does things like, at least relationship wise, when her hand is forced. You know,
Right. Yeah.
so wasn't claiming Jazz, and then sees him getting kissed on by a friend, and all of a sudden, like, no, he's dating me. You know, that's my man, blah blah blah. And then like she clearly Jazz. It took a while. It took a lot for Jazz to like let her take his car, and
Hmm.
he pulls up on her, and you let the other chick, drive it. So now you basically lying to me. So it's like, oh well, I apologize. Like, how about we take this up another level? Like, it's never proactive. It's always reactive. Um, and like I said, like it just like last season they're flirting and everything just seemed. It was a nice touch, like I said, because in the original show, Jazz was not getting anywhere with Hillary at all. So it's good to see Jazz winning, but like how they were kind of like taking those small steps all last season, and then within a matter of two episodes, it's like, nah, you my man, and here's my parents type deal. Like, let's announce it to them. Like, it's like we just hit fast forward out of nowhere. So, yeah, I'm not really buying it. Um, but yeah, I mean, what can I say, right? It's already real.
Can't wait for the wedding episode at the end of the season. That's going to be great.
Like next episode they getting engaged because Hillary was interviewing a guy for the new social media house and got caught flirting with him. So now Jazz is hurt and she's like, well, let's get engaged. Type. Like it's gonna be
Yeah.
something crazy like that.
Everything with Hill is always kind of like the education of Hillary Banks, because it always seems like these obvious things with regard to relationships or business that she is just now learning, right? And so it's interesting to see that, but I do feel a little bit bad for Jazz, because he is kind of
Yeah.
like going along the ride with it. But she's a very beautiful woman, so it's like he's taking the good with the bad. But he ultimately, I think that they have a good relationship. I just, man, when she surprised him with the parentals, I was like, ooh, man, that's rough.
Yeah,
What do you
and
think,
you know what's
Jossie?
interesting? I read, not read, but I think I was listening to the podcast, the Red Love podcast produced by the staff, and they said that like this season, I remember listening to this last season, that Jazz and Uncle Phil are gonna be like, there's gonna be some tension there, and I was like, at first I was like, what could Uncle Phil and Jazz possibly have tension over? I'm like, that's a weird storyline to bring in. But after watching this episode, I'm like, oh, so this is what he's dating his daughter. This is what's gonna cause that little bit of conflict going on. So, you
Yeah.
know, I will give props to the show. I'm so glad the car was not crashed. Not because I didn't want anything to happen to the car, because I thought that it would have been so cliche. I was like, if anything happens to this car, I'm gonna just be like, these writers need to like do some more homework. But
Yeah.
thankfully, it's a smarter way that like where the trust was betrayed as opposed to the car getting crashed.
Right.
So I mean, I think the relationship is moving fast, but I think last season they did build it a good amount. By the end of last season, they were like, sleeping together or hanging together. It
Right.
just wasn't official. So I don't think it's too wild that like they're official now, but I see what you're saying. No, maybe like 3 episodes in, it could have happened instead of like the first episode. But I do think they were kind of like, it was definitely been leaning towards that, and they were pretty close by the season finale. So
Right.
this is some time later. This is like maybe some, I don't know how many months, but it is some time later.
2 weeks.
So
2 weeks
oh,
since
it's
the
only
end
two
of the
weeks. Okay.
last episode of the last
So he was
season, first season.
okay.
So
So Will was only on his own for 2 weeks.
two
Interesting.
weeks. Yep.
Then he with the family car. So but
Yeah.
but but yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like I'm interested to see this relationship develop between Jazz, Uncle Phil, and see. I just don't. You know what they say when about TV writing, when you put two characters together who you've been hinting at, like kind of where do you go from here? Like
Yeah.
the will they won't they gets thrown out. So
Yeah.
why are they gonna break up? I doubt they're gonna be some super strong couple for the next 4 seasons. So we'll see how it goes. Maybe it is too early.
I could definitely see it being something on again, off again over the course of the whole series, with finishing with either marriage or, breakup, one of the
Yeah,
things. But I could see it going either way. I mean, they make a cute couple, in my opinion.
yeah,
And the one thing I do like about him now meeting, the Phil as the boyfriend is that my hope is we do get the him being thrown out of the house scene at some point.
Yeah, they got
We
they got
need
to
that.
recreate that somehow.
We need that. There has to be
I mean,
something going on. They have to make an homage to that.
it will be cool. Like, I mean, I don't know if the writers are able to tackle this situation, but it would be cool if they go into like classism a little bit because clearly David Young and Phil were a little thrown off by like really Jazz, and I don't know if because they expected her to date someone more on her caliber, but what does her
Yeah.
caliber mean? Like he's a respectable guy, he has his own shop, his own business, always treats the family with respect, and is close friends with Will. So I think he's a good guy, and it'd be interesting to see like why do they feel a type of way about Jazz, and go kind of break that down. But we'll see if they really have the depth to handle that.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about Carlton. He, of course, is still getting along with Will, right? We saw him and the boys go out to the club, right? So I thought that was a nice little sort of, Carlton going out on an adventure type of episode. Scene. We'll talk about that in a second. But we also had his parents talking to the doctor about reducing his meds, right? Because he had those anxiety meds and they're trying to wean him off of it. And I was really surprised how much like he was positive about that. I figured he might want to stay on the same meds, but he's really all about weaning himself off the meds. And so I'm glad to see Carlton's sort of character develop and be someone who we aren't always hating all the time. That is nice that he isn't just a person, because he started off as just somebody who you hated, you love to hate. And now he's
Yeah,
kind of like a generally compassionate character that we're rooting for
yeah,
in a lot of ways. I mean, even him and Lisa are getting along well, with Lisa being a good friend and trying to get him to do the Founders Club thing or whatnot. So in general, what do we think of Carlton's development this episode, and how do we think his weaning off of meds will sort of play throughout the rest of the season? Anyone want to go first on that one?
I'm thinking back to like what Balla said last week about, I think we were talking about the what's to come part,
Right.
and I saw like Carlton like wilding out and like drugs and everything, and like Balla brought up like this might be a callback to the episode when Carlton, had taken the drugs at the party and
Right.
ended up in the hospital and everything. I feel like it's kind of like heading toward that direction. Like, Carlton, like Will felt normal in that space they were in the party and stuff. Like
Sure.
for Carlton, like he's not around that kind of atmosphere. Like he was saying, like this is what I needed. This is the vibe that I'm looking for, whatever. Like,
Yeah.
Carlton used to like playing croquet and all that kind of stuff, polo on horses and everything. Like this is,
Lacrosse.
yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like this is completely different for him. Even though like this is kind of like what the African American community, at least for sure the urban one, is kind of already used to and experienced and hip to. So um, it's definitely good to see that their relationship is good. I'm interested to see like I'm interested to see like this whole Carlton trying to be a part of the Black Council thing, how that's gonna eventually what that's gonna evolve into in
Right.
totality. And if like him possibly like going crazy on drugs like
Yeah.
jeopardizes that or something. So yeah, I mean that's I said like Carlton last season was a villain. It was must see TV for me. Like now it's
Yeah.
just kind of like he's cool now, but I'm ready for him to get back in that at odds against Will Rowe. To be honest.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I'd like that Carlton is, like you said, a lot more likable of a character because it was a real bad last season. Props to the writers. The fact that we can even stand him now is credit to the writers because I was like, y'all got to do something soon because it's gonna be hard to recover. Um,
Yeah.
like you mentioned, David, it was interesting about the anxiety mess, and I too was like, oh, so he wants to get off him. His parents are like, she'll be not lower. I was like, I've never really seen that dynamic before, where it's like the parents are more concerned about, giving him less medication. But I guess it makes sense because they're like, this dosage has allowed him to function. So like, we don't want, because they know him better than we know him, obviously. So they've seen him at his worst and seen like, how the anxiety affects his life. So they know what's best. So it's interesting that the doctor, it was their final decision. But yeah, and also I will say I'm so glad they didn't get caught when they went out to the club. I was like another cliche. If they come home and the mom's just waiting there, I'm
Yeah,
gonna
I
be
know,
like
right?
TV show writing 101. But they got away with it. I hope it doesn't come back up. But I was like, that's fire. They got away with it. But they did hint. So if you remember the end of last season, when Carlton is looking at the painting and like a little out of pocket that Viv painted her niece or her nephew with the crown and like he's the new prince. But
Yeah.
Carlton was looking at it with that eye, like, okay, so I think they were throwing the seeds that like, even though their initial beef is up, there's still going to be some tension there coming up, and we kind of see that in the preview. But I think it makes sense just because it's two like people who like are strong-willed in the same house, or nowadays not really in the same house, but kind of just in the same environment. So I'm
Right.
interested to see that pop up. I hope it can be done organically and not as like forced as it was in season 1, where it's like, I don't like you, you don't like me. I hope now that they have a brotherly friendship and like a real brotherly bond, I would still want to see that like sibling tension pop up, or that like, partnership tension pop up, where it's like a little more mature than, or is not quite as black and white as it may have been last season.
Yeah, no, I mean, as a parent, I think I definitely empathize with Phil's wanting his son to be able to function normally
Yeah.
without having to be on medication for the rest of his life. I mean,
Yeah.
there's ways to cope with anxiety and other issues, hopefully without needing meds. Although I've known people who've had anxiety issues, and it is very debilitating
Yeah.
when you have anxiety, and like to the point where you're going to doctors and stuff like that. So. But I mean, the fact that they want to wean him off and he wants to wean off the meds is a good sign. It's hoping that he can hopefully get over, or at least cope with that kind of his issues naturally, and that's where you want
Yeah.
to get to. But I wish him all the best in terms of his character in
Yeah.
that. But I think it's going to result in a crash later on that is going to, like, all of the things that he's doing, and like he's already sort of shown some of that when he was like he showed his sort of hesitation at the blackout, and the protest and stuff like that. You could see like that was getting to him, and it was starting to kind of cause the anxiety to build up again. So I feel there's going to be some definite blowback from the turning down of the meds, but
Yeah.
ultimately it's a sort of path that he has to go through, right?
I mean,
His character has to have that arc.
Yeah, I was interested to see if they were hinting, because I think we saw in a preview that like drugs may come back up. They showed him kind of stressing out, or like
Yeah.
that drugs may be a factor again, and it could be creative editing where like he could just be getting anxiety attack, or it could be a vision in it. We don't know yet because that's happened. But in the club scene, I thought they may have been hinting at it when he was like real sweating, and Will was like, "Are you okay? Like everything going on?" He was
Yeah.
like, "Yeah, I'm just dancing, having fun." And I was like, "Are they hinting that the drugs come back up?" And like now, when him trying to get off the medicine, it could come up that like there's a reason that he's trying to get less medicine. Maybe he has other means of coping. Who knows? But I don't know. Curious to see what you guys thought about that, or what they think they're hinting at something else.
I just think it's kind of an overconfidence thing. Like, I think he's sort of on this high based on the fact that
Okay.
he's on the meds, and there's like the changes in his body chemistry and stuff, and it's causing a reaction. But I think it's going to be something that I can even envision the scene in my head where it's like everything is coming at him at the same time, and he
Yeah.
just breaks down or blows up or something like that.
Yeah.
Because he's overestimating his own how he feels about the change. He's going too fast, too quickly, thinking that he's better, right? And he's not really as better
Yeah.
as he could be. So,
And if you think about it, his parents never found out about his drug addiction, so
oh
they
yeah,
don't
that's
know
right.
that he was off that cocaine. So they don't know like, or the Xanax too. So they don't. They saw him like have those breakdowns and stuff, and they didn't know like some of it was drug induced. So interesting.
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, it'll be interesting to see if that definitely comes back up. You mentioned the club scene, so let's talk about that for a second. That was definitely something where Carlton had some fun. right? And everyone was
Yep,
having some
yep.
fun, there, of course, getting down. And we also found out that Jackie is the niece of Doc. That was a fun little reveal. What do y'all think of kind of Will and Jackie's relationship moving a little bit, and that sort of dynamic with Doc? Any thoughts? Or the club scene in general?
That's
Mm,
Are we excited about Will and Jackie? Like, obviously, Will's
uh
thirsty for Jackie, but I mean, are we as excited about what that relationship is going to turn into, or is it too early to tell?
I mean, it's given like setup. I mean, clearly Doc is has Will like has some kind of goal in mind for Will and his family. And the fact that she's his niece is for me is more so okay. I guess he's really playing Will from all angles. I would hope the writing is not that clear cut and like she may not know that the uncle has ulterior motives, or it could be a coincidence that he sat next to her at the game and they kind of connected. But to me, it's given like Will's just trapped like from all angles now. His girl, his mentor, everything is kind of all play him. It is interesting that she's kind of set up as the anti Lisa, like that she's in the streets, she's the party girl. Lisa's the responsible, sophisticated woman. So
Yeah.
a lot of parallels this season. Like.
yeah, I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it at all. Like, and then like I said, like it just like Josh said, like it sounds more like a setup because I mean, clearly Will
Yeah,
has
yeah.
always made his intentions around her to be like, yo, what about Doc? What can I find out about Doc? This, that, and the next. Then he tries to circle back to like the girl, right? And I mean, she not dumb. Like, unless they really writing her to be that dumb. So, and like I don't know, like I'm not quite buying it to be honest. Like I ain't really got much to say on it. I
Well,
think I think it was
Nolan,
Also, oh, no, go ahead.
uh, I was going to say that didn't I didn't think that same way you did, but that actually is making me think now. I wonder if perhaps Jackie and Doc are in cahoots to
Yeah,
get
that's what
Will
I'm saying. That's what it
stuck in
seems
with
like.
Doc. Yeah,
That's what it seems like. That the fact that she's his niece is like, oh, this is a setup, like from all angles.
yeah,
Like Doc is getting this man trapped from every point of view. I was interested in
yeah.
the club they were in. I was a little confused. I was like, these kids are not 21. I'm not even sure if they're 18 because they're like,
They're not
you
18.
know, yeah, they're not
I think they're
18. So
17.
how is it that they got in the club? One,
Jazz
two,
hooked them
she
up.
was in,
Jazz vouched for him. He even said, like, I'm
oh,
don't do
okay.
anything stupid, don't drink, because I will
Okay.
get you out of here like your dad.
So Jazz is older. So how old is
Yeah.
Jazz supposed to be? I
I
guess
mean, he's at
Haley
least
was
he's over 21, obviously. He's probably in his mid 20s, I would imagine.
okay.
Mid to
Maybe a
late
little too old
20s.
to hang with Will. Maybe if he's hanging with Will, they're close. I'd give him 21, maybe 4 year difference, maybe. But
I mean, he owns a record shop.
yeah, that's true.
So, I mean, I would say maybe early 20s, if that.
Okay.
Yeah, you're right. Why is he hanging out with a 17-year-old bunch of kids, right?
Okay, cool. So that
Well,
makes sense.
he
And then
did live
I
in his
wonder,
house.
yeah, they're living. And I wonder how old is Jackie because she was in there too. So I'm glad that okay. So
Yeah,
Jazz Bucks. I was like, how is all these kids out here turning up at midnight? Like, what's going on?
I don't know. I don't know. Very lax security or lax
Yeah,
bouncers.
must be. And then
Um,
Doc was there in the club too. Like, what do you want to know about me? I'm like, oh gosh.
yeah, I was a little surprised by that, but no, I'm intrigued by the sort of everybody working ulterior motives type thing. But we'll see. We'll see how that pans out. That's definitely a very interesting wrinkle, which I
I
didn't
guess at
take
the
into
end,
consideration.
yeah, at the end we can get into speculation. I'm curious to see what do you guys think Doc is wants out of Will and his family because he was staring at the banks. He saw Will and flipped the page and it was the Banks family. He was like, "This is my eyes are on them." So like, wonder what his game is or what his scheme.
Yeah, absolutely. No, we'll have the episode speculation at the end here for sure. But I did want to hit on the one last major story beat that I think warrants discussion. There were some other little things and developments, but it's really nothing I think that's worth our time talking about yet with like Viv and Reed. But it's just not really anything developing there yet. We'll see how that goes. But Jeffrey and Phil, and Jeffrey being back in the house, and of course Phil's amazing ability to apologize and get people to just come right back. What do we think about this? Obviously, great to see Jeffrey back in the show, back in the house. You know, you can't deny that he's the breakout character of this entire new series, and he's definitely got something going on, all kinds of interesting stuff, all kinds of interesting backstories, and we're learning more about him and his son. And there was some stuff hinted about, Frederick, and we definitely saw how close him and Phil are. Phil saying like, "I love you," and like all kinds of stuff like that. So they smoked the peace cigar, and he was back in the house. So I was a little bit like trepidatious about that, because it is very much like, okay, you're showing that this is now a repetitious type thing, but at the end of the day, we got to get the family back together, right? We need Jeffrey back in the house. So perhaps they're just trying to get through this so they can get back to the status quo. What do y'all think?
I mean, you hit a lot of things on the head. Like, there was another cry moment with Uncle Phil, and all is well after the tears flow. I mean, you always felt Jeffrey had to come back. I mean,
Yeah.
Jeffrey just pops up all over the place these last couple episodes anyway.
Right. Like, what is he doing what is he doing at the basketball game?
Yeah,
like he doesn't have a kid in the academy, as far as we know.
Yeah,
he's just showing up.
And speaking of kid, like, just touching on his own, you know, difficulties with his own child.
Yeah.
As far as, I guess, whatever arrangements are set up that you can't see him. I can't remember if they talked about that in season one. Like I said, like, there's a lot of things from season one I can't remember, but I'm pretty sure as we go on, like, they go, oh, okay, I remember that point or whatever. But I do remember they did mention Jeffrey did have a kid, and I think that was kind of the driving force around him, like, reaching out to Will's dad in season one to arrange that.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it's like I said, Jeffrey brought up some stuff, where Uncle Phil was like, yeah, man, I love you and everything. And just like, nah, I work. You said I work for you. Like,
Right.
Like that's really hurtful things. Like,
Yeah.
I just couldn't really buy like one conversation, and then 10 minutes later, Jeffrey shows up with all his bags.
Yeah.
So it just wasn't buying. Like, I just felt like that conversation, if it had been next episode, maybe something happened, and like Will was like all by himself. Jeffrey picked him up, and then Jeffrey's like, man, I've been thinking about coming back home. Like, something a little bit more organic like that.
Right.
And stuff, than him just popping up. Like, again, like, it's a lot of good things happening in the story. It's just that it's just kind of like they know that we know what's coming, and they're just like, let's just get it over with so we can keep moving on.
Yeah.
That's rubbing me wrong about it.
I think if this were a more traditional series that was, scheduled out and done over the course of 22 to 24 episodes in a season, like what we think of typical television, I think you could get away with that type of multiple episode story arc to get those resolved. But again, it is 10 episodes of season.
Yeah.
So it's like we're already a fifth of the way through the entire season. So that I can give them a little bit of leeway with their desire to kind of accelerate certain stories. But
Yeah.
I'm hoping that because they're doing that, they have that much more to tell story-wise. It is a little bit like kind of deflating in a way to know that all these major things that they were setting up last season are immediately resolved in the beginning of next season, right? It's like, is that going to be the trend going forward with future seasons, right? That's one thing to think about, though, that I thought about.
No, I definitely agree. I see what you're saying, though, as far as like, I mean, Uncle Phil is very prideful, and I think his pride is it's already started giving problems, but I think we still see that he still has that in him. He barely wanted to say anything to Will, did not want to apologize to Jeffrey. He did have an end of the episode, but I think his pride is going to kind of come back and bite him later on in episodes. It was kind of rushed that, like, okay, Jeffrey's back. He is definitely the character, like they said. He is a stand-up. He's the character I'm most interested in seeing his story progress. What happened with his son? Why is he not allowed to see him? What does he really do? He's secure. Like, what does he really do for the Banks family? But But yeah, I don't know. I mean, like you said, it's 10 episodes. We know this stuff is gonna happen. We know Will's gonna go back to Bel-Air family. We know that Jeffrey's gonna come back eventually. Definitely could have been fleshed out a little more organically, but I see why it had to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm excited for the kind of storylines and what Jeffrey's going to do in the show. I wonder if there's going to be some Jeffrey, Phil, Doc stuff, happening. Because
Yeah.
obviously, Jeffrey is Phil's sort of, guard dog and, does sort of his dirty work for him, right? So, I mean, we've already seen that there's a tension between him and Doc, Phil and Doc, just in that first
Oh
meeting.
yeah,
Just be like, if we choose to engage with
yeah.
you type thing, right? So it's like, yeah, he definitely smells, senses something with Doc and sort of who he is
Man,
that Phil does or that Will doesn't.
a Jeffrey centric episode would be real fire. Like from the perspective of Jeffrey from like the beginning to end. I know my favorite episodes of shows are usually those one-offs that are like unrelated to the central plot but focus on like a sider character. I think that'd be a
Yeah.
really cool idea. I know they only have 10 episodes, so probably won't happen, but it'd be
No, it's like we have to check in with every single member
yeah,
of the
every
family,
member.
every
Yeah.
single episode. It would be neat to have like again those creative episodes where it's just
Yeah.
focus on
I
one
miss
character.
those.
Or those what do they call the bottle episodes, right? Where they have to like, be creative and they're stuck in a
Yeah.
room type thing.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of not kind of off topic, but I know a big thing I see online and talk about is how like what we're missing with these streaming shows versus like a traditional 23 episode season on TV, where it's like those filler episodes kind of do give like what are these characters' interests? Like what do they like to eat? What games, what movies do they like to go to? Stuff like that we see with those longer seasons where it's like they're filler, but you're still
Right.
focusing on other characters or just given more natural, like, not related to the main story, but just chill episodes or just fun episodes that we don't see a lot with these like very streamlined, very specific plot focused streaming series. So if this was like on a network, we could definitely probably get a Jeffrey episode or like, a Doc episode or something like that, but it probably won't happen when now that's on streaming.
Yeah, you can't accuse this series of having filler. I think it's
Yeah.
pretty lean
Yeah.
for the most part. All right, guys. Well, before we get into predictions for next episode and the rest of the season, are there any other beats or story beats you want to make sure you mention from this episode?
I think we actually hit most of them.
No, yeah. I mean, the only again, I'm not going to go into Viv and Reed right now because
Yeah,
that's there's nothing there. And
not really much. Yeah.
Hill and her Ivy. Ivy is the person she's working with.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, tension. Yeah, okay. So, all right. Well, let's get into then the predictions for next episode and any predictions. So, what do you think is going to happen with any of these storylines that you think we haven't already talked about?
I think we're definitely gonna get some more attention there with Doc. I assume now that Jeffrey's back, he's gonna be looking into Doc a little harder, looking into
Yeah.
the background, and we're probably gonna get that Uncle Phil like where he puts Jeffrey on something like, "Yo, check into this guy, like see what's up with him."
Yeah.
Probably gonna get that walkout the next episode with the Black Student Union, to get the original teacher back. So I think that's kind of what I'm seeing. I'm not sure what's gonna happen with Ivy and Hillary next episode, but I assume it's gonna be a little more attention there since Hillary's kind of bossing up and doesn't want to be, thrown
Yeah.
around anymore.
It's bubbling to something, but who knows what.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely was going to touch on that walking out thing. I think that's going to be, especially like based off of what we saw like the season preview.
Yeah.
I think that's definitely going to be something that's going to be brought up and really explored. I hope they take their time with it. I hope it's not we walk out for 5 minutes and 10 minutes later, teacher's back hired or something like that. Like, it feels like I wouldn't be surprised, but I'm just hoping that's not what we get. On a much random note though, want to shout out my girl Martha.
Hey, Martha.
Was pleasantly surprised to see that she was an extra on the show. We went to Virginia Tech together, so
Nice.
Oh wow, that's dope.
yeah, she was the on Viv when she went to the office to see can't remember the guy's name, the paint guy.
Reed.
When she went to Reed's office, like she played the secretary role.
Oh wow, that's
Oh,
pretty
okay. That's a big
Actually,
role.
I was
That's
like,
pretty big role.
cool.
I was
Nice.
like, I'm like, from the side profile. First, I'm like, man, like, and when they showed her face, I'm like, yo, that's Martha. Like, yo, that's dope. I mean, I knew
Wow.
she was like doing like directing and some producing and stuff, but seeing her like, had that little small role in the episode was like definitely a pleasant surprise. So, I mean, I don't even know if she'll see this, but I just wanted to shout her out, give her just due. Like that. That's pretty damn cool.
That's nice. That's your claim to fame and your potential
that's
connection
fire.
with the show.
That's super fire.
Right.
You're like, you're hooking me up with a guest appearance next season. Anything to get me closer to Hillary.
Right to Coco Jones, like you're
right.
getting a little closer now.
Man, I can say, like I said last episode, man, I'm taking now. I'm taking.
I know.
Yep.
Too late.
Too late.
Oh man. Yeah, I mean, definitely the Doc Will thing is going to develop. I think Doc's going to be pushing Will to do things that aren't in his best interest, and it's going to cause lots of strife with his family. I think Will's going to be making some choice mistakes based on Doc's guidance, which are, kind of maybe putting him at odds with obviously Carlton, which will probably, we'll see that, again later on. Carlton, definitely is going to be doing some stuff with the Black Student Union and protesting. I think is going to maybe get him some unwanted attention, or maybe that'll end up being something that does get him good attention. Like it'll be something that initially seems bad, but then it's like, oh no, it demonstrates your leadership. And because I think that founders thing, that sort of seed about the founders thing is going to blossom into something later on in the season, where it's like he's going to have to obviously challenge his own desire for, wanting to, see, the right thing happen for folks, and his, the sort of prim and proper, course of path that, his being raised to follow, right? So he's going to have to deal with that, which is going to create anxiety, which is going to set him down the path towards self-destruction potentially, right?
Yeah.
I did like that scene between him and Lisa. I mean, obviously they're not going to set up a relationship again between them, but it is good to see them being friends with one another.
Definitely.
And then, of course, Jazz will propose to Hill next episode. Episode 4, they'll have the wedding. Episode 5 will be the divorce. Episode 6, she'll say that she's pregnant. Episode 7, we'll have the child, the baby born. Episode 8, they'll be a teenager. In episode 9, they'll be going off to college. And episode 10,
got it, man.
That they're their kid will have kids and the grandkids. So
the writers are scrambling right now to change. They're like they figured it out. They're just trying to go back.
That's right. They're gonna go redo reshoots based on my predictions. But those are the major things. I can't. We'll see what crazy things happen with Ash. We'll still wait for them to bring back up the relationship stuff. Right.
Yeah.
Maybe that's kind of ship has sailed. I don't know. And then Reed and Viv, I don't know. I mean, I really don't care about.
Yeah,
like
I'm
Viv's
not too
art
interested
collection.
in that.
It's like, it's so beyond what anything like I can relate to personally. Like, oh my God, the ultra rich having, problems with art. I mean, they're not going to have a relationship, right? That's definitely not going to happen. But
yeah,
because I was like, is she going to fall for Reed, right? No, that's not going to happen. But
it is interesting that that they kind of painted him in the negative light, because in the past he always was helpful, or like there, even though it was like that flirty like still thing going on, it wasn't, oh, he's doing something wrong or something like, anti Riv, but now it's like, oh, he kind of took her out of the picture, or like it's more of an antagonist thing to do than like last season. Last season he was like an antagonist for Phil, but it wasn't like he was doing something bad. It was just, I don't like how my wife is paying more attention than him to me. Now it's like, oh, you really wrote her out of the article, so it's like, how would he do that? So interesting.
Yeah, it's just like there's no real stakes in it. It's like, okay, so you're gonna quit the art thing. Okay, it's like,
yeah,
so it's difficult to catch those storylines yet.
Yeah,
Maybe they'll
it's just
prove
like
themselves to be more interesting later.
I liked her storyline season one, how like she was finding herself, but this is more like just like drama for drama's sake, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, guys. Well, that's been an awesome episode. Thank you guys so much for chatting with me and bringing up such great ideas. And of course, I've always enjoy our talks. And if you have anything you'd like to add to the conversation, add it below in the comments, and we'll look at those. And I always like to see what you all think about and the concepts and story ideas that you present on the subreddit. So keep that going. And of course, we'll see you all here next week on when we talk about episode 3. Any last words, guys, before we sign out?
Oh, I'll see you guys next week.
All right. See you later, Gyasi.
Safe.
Stay safe, Nolan. All right, guys. Have a great night. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.